Hi, this is Jeff Blauette, technical agronomist with Cooperative Farmers Elevator, and on this week's Field Friday segment, I'd probably like to start off with saying our thoughts and our prayers are with a lot of the flood victims. We've got an awful lot of people that have had their life changed drastically with flooded houses, flooded basements, lost belongings, some permanently life-altering situations. Our local communities have banded together to help those people as best we can. And that's why we live in Iowa. That's just what we do. But want to say that we're all hoping for the best for everybody involved. Obviously, you're out in a cornfield. I have some serious concerns now in this corn now. I'm sick of talking about how much rain we've had this year. It's been unbelievable. But if we really just think about the amount of rain we've had since basically since the 25th of April, even the last 2 months. I don't think anybody alive has ever seen anything like we've seen in some of these areas with the amount of rainfall that we've had. So what's that done to us, and why am I concerned? I've started to get some phone calls, and I've seen some things that are alarming to me in the corn. With all this water, we always talk about water and nitrogen. I'm afraid we've lost a lot of nitrogen. Probably more than we've ever lost. With saturated soils, with lots of water going through the profile, and then of course obviously erosion as well. But if we look at a lot of these fields, I'm starting to hear about my corn's yellow on the bottom. Why does the corn have such a yellow look? 1 year ago, right now, we were worried about the corn that was yellow on the bottoms, and it was so dry that our corn was really struggling to take up potassium. From the road or just from a quick glance, that lower part of the plant that was yellow, it was mostly potassium deficiency. We look out here now, we've got the same thing going on. It's a little different yellowing pattern, and the wet areas obviously are worse. That's an indication, plus the color pattern on the leaves. We've talked about with potassium, it's the outer edges of the leaves, the lower leaves. With nitrogen, it's the inner part. There's an inverse V that starts to show up on the tip of the leaf and works its way towards the center of the leaf, and then it works to the higher and higher leaves up the plant. The nitrogen thing scares me this year more than ever. I think it's only going to continue to get worse. This corn was planted the Monday after Mother's Day. If we think about the worst case scenario, is later planted corn has a small root system. There may be some nitrogen down there, but the roots haven't gotten there yet. How wet is the soil underneath? Roots will not grow into soil that's saturated with moisture. They need oxygen in that soil as well to flourish. So they're not going to go down and get nitrogen until we start to dry a little bit. That concerns me. How deep is that nitrogen? We don't know. Most of our nitrate tests we take, the Iowa State test is talking about a 0 to 12 inch. I think we all know that there's probably some nitrogen down below 12 inch, but how far down? And can we access it? Things that are in your favor, if it was planted in April, it's got a bigger root system. The old rule of thumb is the corn has roots down about as deep as the corn plant is tall. It may be a little less this year if you're in wetter soils because it's had some saturation below, but just a general rule, that's why some of the bigger corn looks better yet. I think it has a bigger root system, is exploring more soil, and it's probably taken up more nitrogen already. But we're in this rapid growth phase, this grand growth phase of corn, where this corn is really taking off, so its nitrogen needs are skyrocketing right now. If we have saturated soils, we've talked about nitrogen loss. If we have light soils, obviously they just can't hold nitrogen anyway. If we have any other rooting issues, if we plant it a little wet, we have sidewall compaction. Those are some of the worst case scenarios. Things that are in your favor, manure history soils. There's constant breakdown and mineralization of this manure that was applied 12 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago in small amounts, but you add them all up, they'll continue to supply nitrogen to this crop as the season goes on, so manure history fields will have an advantage. Any fields that we top dressed or side dressed, that nitrogen's been out there and it still had a lot of moisture with it, but it hasn't seen as much. That may help. Anything that, we've done historically to improve drainage so it hasn't been saturated and not allowed denitrification. That's going to help, but yeah, with as much rain as we've had, even that's been overwhelmed. What can we do about it? There are a few things. You know, corn this size, if we can dry out enough, we could still top dress some dry nitrogen with the ground rigs. We just got a machine stuck today trying to do some. That's going to be a problem. We're going to be terribly inefficient. And it's not any fun to be out in fields like this because you're going to have wet spots, maybe even in places we don't normally have them, so it's not as easy as it sounds just to avoid the low bottoms. Something we haven't done, we did just a little bit of it in 18 and 19 because we got behind and it was so wet all the time then as well. We can fly dry nitrogen on with an airplane, and I think that may be something to consider this year. It's not cheap, but I think the loss potential on some of these fields, it may warrant that, and it may be something to consider. It's not always easy to do. How is a planting done? Is it, you know, with a good GPS system and auto steer and so forth, but a wide drop system? If we have the ability to have somebody that has a wide drop, high clearance machine, we've got some time to go out and dribble some liquid nitrogen, and if we're out there, maybe even should throw some boron with it because that's a mobile nutrient we've probably lost as well. But that potentially is an issue. In my mind, the jury's still out on a lot of these biologicals that make a lot of claims on helping that plant take up nitrogen and create its own nitrogen and do some weird things. This is going to be a year where if a guy wanted to play with some of those things, if we would be able to put that on. You know, that's something we can potentially put on with a ground rig yet if you can get high enough, maybe a drone or an airplane. If you wanted to try something like that as a band-aid, this would be a year that may be something to try. I'm not real confident in a lot of those products, but this would be a year where if it's ever going to help, it's going to be a year like this potentially. So not a lot of great news. I'm really concerned what next week develops into. As fast as this has happened now that we have some sunshine, corn's starting to grow again, and if it's short of something, it starts to tell you that real quickly by the symptoms, and that's what we're seeing. So take a look at your corn. I know we got a lot, and you maybe you're busy with other things, and I get that. If you have the opportunity, let's take a look. Just make sure that we think we're happy. I'm afraid a lot of these corn acres will not be, and that's going to lead to lots of issues later, yield loss and reduced stock quality and so forth later. So we have a little bit of time to do some things. They're not nice, they're not as easy, they're not convenient, they're maybe not the cheapest, but at least let's have the discussion and make that decision before it's too late to help anything. Take a look. That's all I can say. I guess with that, that's this week Field Friday segment, and we'll see you next week.